Hey friends, this episode of Tracks for the Journey brings a personal story. I've entitled it Larry's Leuko Logbook. In several upcoming episodes, I'll be sharing my experience with Leukoplakia, a prelude to oral cancer. My hope is to share a story that will promote your well-being, get some crazy thoughts off my chest, and entertain a bit. And don't worry, there won't be a fundraiser at the end. The journey isn't over, and I'd like for you to share it with me. On a cold night in February of 2024, I stumbled into the urgent care lobby holding a bucket half filled with blood. My pale, blood-stained face and the commanding words of my wife brought a rushed march past the reception desk to a treatment room. Perhaps a little startled at my sudden appearance at this midnight hour, a doctor and a small staff of nurses started working on my life-threatening medical emergency. Leukoplakia is my nemesis. It's a growth of painful cells that can lead to cancer, and this appeared on my innocent tongue in the fall of 2022. The story that I want to tell you over these upcoming episodes involves family, friends, medical professionals, treatments, mood swings, mortality, and yes, God. The bloody bucket formed another twist in a long, winding path that isn't over yet. In fact, in just a few days, I'll have a second surgery to remove another part of my tongue. But more on that later. I'm sharing Larry's Leuko Logbook to let you know more about my experience and perhaps to connect with yours as you go through some type of chronic illness or great challenge and difficulty that upsets your apple cart. My experience has been part confusing, part frustrating, part frightening, and part amazing. And maybe all of those at once. And by the way, some good ER care stopped my bleeding episode that night, though not before a messy session required a lot of janitorial work, reviving me from passing out and spending the night in the hospital. Let me rewind my story a couple of years, to June of 2022. Jan and I sat with 3 of our children and Jan's extended family grieving the sudden death of her brother Merrill. A bad fall just days before brought a severe shoulder injury and hospitalization. He had made progress toward dismissal when something went terribly wrong. The crash team rushed to his side, but he couldn't be revived. The storm of grief, with its emptiness and regret and confusion and even anger, rippled across the entire family. My eulogy, preached to an overflowing crowd, remembered a vibrant, joyful man, distinguished professor of psychology, wise patriarch for the family, now gone all too quickly. Saying goodbye felt so profoundly hard for all of us in that Joplin, Missouri funeral home. The dark specter of death stood near me and all the family once again. I'm telling the story about the funeral in 2022 because little did we know a diabolical virus from someone in Joplin had entered our bloodstream to hitchhike back to our home in Texas. Within a few days, Jan fell ill, and I followed soon after. That deadly devil who had brought death and misery to millions, COVID-19, had arrived at our house. We joined the victim list in spite of our up-to-date vaccines, mask wearing, mask manufacturing even, and protection for 2 years of pandemic fear. We moved quickly to get the antibody medicine Paxlovid, and as predicted, our symptoms seemed mild compared to the terrible loss that so many millions of lives had suffered worldwide. After brief days of quarantine, we were back in action socially. Even my 3-mile run felt normal a few days later. except we noticed some peculiar after effects. Jan's taste buds went haywire, and small sores erupted inside my lips. Her highly sensitive taste, a boon for all the wonderful cooking across the years, signaled that she was eating sheet metal instead of something tasty. Throughout the fall weeks that came, my symptoms worsened. Large sores on my tongue made eating painful, especially with spicy, hot, cold, crunchy, citrus, well, just about anything. Jan fixed a sumptuous Thanksgiving meal for the entire family, though nothing tasted normal for her or for me. I chewed carefully to avoid the sores that throbbed with every bite of that meal. But dear God, I didn't back down from the sumptuous pumpkin pie. My feelings about this continued problem were normal for anybody, I guess. I felt frustrated, a little bit angry at having such a reaction when many people didn't, and maybe a bit concerned because it just wouldn't go away. In my own faith, God and I had been connecting with this through a different perspective than my early theological training. In my first 26 years of Christian ministry as a pastor, I didn't follow the typical Southern Baptist doctrines. The welcome move in 2002 away from those devolving creeds in that denomination brought me to chaplaincy, and my counseling experience continued to broaden my views of God's larger work. In 2018, a refreshing new theological perspective, open and relational theology, defined God's non-coercive, essential love as what I had always been experiencing. I wrote in my diary that year, after those many, many months of study, the essential love of God, Christ universal, ultimate salvation for all through Jesus, the Bible as narrative, the Spirit working in all things and all people, science as an ally, the future wide open and collaborative. It's where I am and pleased to be. That diary entry connected with a profoundly biblical view of God as ever-present, all-loving, and fully active. It enriched my worldview, but I never guessed how vital those beliefs would be for all that was to come in this medical journal. Going back to the final months of 2022, as I struggled with this painful condition on my tongue, my doctors and dentists knew that I had no risk factors for any oral cancer. And so my primary care physician suggested it might be an allergic reaction that was producing the red, painful lesions that continued to appear on the right side of my tongue. I started seeing an ear, nose, and throat specialist. He assured me after a brief visual exam it wasn't cancer, and that fear had really been haunting my mind for weeks. I had to face the fact that my family had many episodes of cancer in the past, and maybe my time had come, and that filled me with a sense of dread. But with his words of reassurance, it was positive, and I could go on from there. None of those doctors or dentists mentioned a word I would come to dread: Leukoplakia. At that time, I gave a big sigh of relief. Whew! That meant that those painful sores on my tongue would surely go away in time. Friends, thank you for joining me for this episode of Tracks for the Journey. I'll be sharing more of Larry's Leuko Logbook in the coming sessions. I'm doing this through my weekly newsletter and through my blog. And I hope you'll pass on this episode to someone who's dealing with a chronic medical condition or suffering with something that seems to be so threatening. I invite you to subscribe to my newsletter or to the blog by going to my website, www.tracksforthejourney.com. As always, your comments and ratings are appreciated. And my email, if you would like to connect with me directly, is connecttfj@mail.com. May your journey be rich with well-being.